I arrived at the Cranford Hills Country Club on a cool Sunday morning, the kind of morning when the air feels clean and the sunlight rests gently on everything it touches. I had driven nearly an hour the entire time, reminding myself that this was supposed to be a peaceful family brunch. My father had called me 2 days earlier, his voice unusually calm, and said, "We would like you to join us this weekend." I said yes without hesitation. Despite everything, a part of me still hoped we could someday behave like a normal family. The club looked magnificent, as it always did. Its stone pillars, arched windows, and manicured hedges made it feel like a place designed for the wealthy and the proud. I had grown up coming here always as the quiet son trailing behind my parents, always feeling like a guest in my own life. I was 25 now, but the memories never fully faded. I wore what felt comfortable for a casual family brunch, a clean polo shirt, dark jeans, and a blazer. Nothing fancy. Nothing inappropriate in my mind. I walked toward the outdoor terrace where my parents always sat. My father, Gregory Blake, noticed me first. His expression changed instantly, as if a bitter taste had touched his tongue. He rose halfway from his chair, eyes narrowing with visible disgust. "Absolutely not," he said, loud enough for nearby tables to turn. "You are not sitting with us dressed like that." I stopped, unsure whether to laugh or simply stand there. My mother set her fork down and stared at me as if she did not recognize me. "Evan, what on earth are you wearing?" she asked. Her tone contained no curiosity, only disapproval. "Clothes," I answered quietly. "You invited me to brunch." "I invited you," my mother said, "assuming you would dress appropriately. This is Cranford Hills, not a college cafeteria." Before I could respond, my sister Charlotte stepped out from the clubhouse. She wore a pale blue dress, elegant and expensive, the kind she always chose for moments when she wanted to be admired. She looked at me with disbelief. "Oh my goodness, Evan," she said. "Are you serious? You cannot wear jeans here." I stood there, sunlight warming my face, humiliation tightening my chest, realizing this brunch was never meant to feel like family at all. My father rose completely from his chair, now his face tightening with a familiar blend of anger and embarrassment. At 58, Gregory Blake still carried himself like a man who expected the world to adjust around him. He pointed toward the entrance of the clubhouse as if directing an unwanted guest. "Go home," he said sharply. "Go home and change into something respectable before you dare sit at this table." I felt several pairs of eyes shift toward us. The Blakes making a scene was always an event worth watching at Cranford Hills. A few older members raised their eyebrows, whispering behind polished wine glasses. My mother pressed a napkin to her forehead, her discomfort written across every line of her face. "Gregory, please," she murmured, although she did not look at me. "People are staring." "They should stare," my father replied. "Let them see how my son has chosen to present himself today." He turned directly to me. "Do you have any idea how this reflects on our family?" I opened my mouth to speak, but Charlotte stepped closer, interrupting before I could form a single word. "Evan," she said in a hushed voice that was still loud enough for half the terrace to hear, "just listen to Father. You look completely out of place. You know how the dress code works here." "I am wearing a blazer," I answered calmly. "A blazer over jeans," Charlotte reminded me as if it were a crime. "You cannot be serious." The humiliation pressed against my ribs like a tightening band. Still, I stood my ground. I had spent too many years shrinking myself to fit their expectations. My father exhaled loudly and shook his head. "I am done with this conversation." He turned toward the main building. "I am going to speak with management. Someone will escort you out if you will not remove yourself." For a moment I wondered if he was bluffing. But then he strode across the terrace with quick, determined steps, the way he always walked when he wanted to prove a point. My mother followed behind him, her heels clicking sharply against the stone. Charlotte trailed after them, shaking her head at me with a mixture of pity and superiority. I remained where I stood, feeling the sting of every judgmental glance. Then slowly I followed them inside. If my father was determined to turn this into a public display, then I would see exactly how far he intended to take it. The moment I stepped inside the main lobby of Cranford Hills, the temperature seemed to change. The cool air carried the scent of polished oak and fresh lilies, a scent I had known since childhood. My father stood at the concierge desk, tapping his fingers impatiently against the marble surface. My mother and Charlotte stood behind him, both wearing the strained expressions of people who believed they were the victims in this situation. The young concierge, dressed in a crisp navy uniform, looked nervous as she faced my father. She kept glancing at me as if unsure whether she should acknowledge my presence. "Sir," she said carefully, "I understand there is a concern regarding dress code, but—" "No," my father interrupted with a sharp wave of his hand. "There is no misunderstanding. This young man is not appropriately dressed for this club. My family and I cannot be embarrassed like this. I want him removed immediately." The concierge hesitated. "Mr. Blake, if he is your guest. He is not my guest anymore. I am withdrawing that invitation." My father straightened his jacket with a quick, agitated motion. "Call your manager, now, or the owner if that is what it takes." My mother touched his arm lightly. "Gregory, please resolve this quickly. The Vandersons are watching." Charlotte folded her arms, shifting her weight as she checked her reflection in one of the glass panels. She avoided looking at me entirely. The concierge nodded and disappeared behind a door marked "Staff Only." Silence followed, broken only by the soft murmur of other members entering the lobby. A few of them recognized my father and offered polite nods, but their eyes soon drifted toward the growing tension in front of the concierge desk. 3 minutes later, the door opened again. This time, the concierge returned with Marianne Caldwell, the club's operations manager, a composed woman in her 40s with a reputation for handling even the most demanding members. Her steps were confident, and her posture carried an undeniable authority. "Mr. Blake," Marianne said warmly, "how may I assist you today?" My father gestured toward me. "This is my son. He has arrived dressed in a way that violates every standard this club upholds. I want him escorted out. I insist on it." Marianne looked at me, then back at him. Her expression did not shift, but something in her eyes seemed to sharpen. "I understand," she said. "In that case, I will need to notify our general director." My father nodded with satisfaction, unaware that everything he believed about this moment was about to change. Marianne stepped aside and signaled toward the hallway behind her, the private wing reserved for senior staff. A moment later, Helen Ward, the general director of Cranford Hills, emerged. Helen was in her early 60s, dignified, calm, and respected by every member who walked through those doors. Her presence alone caused several people in the lobby to straighten their posture. She approached with measured steps, her eyes moving from my father to me, then back again. "Mr. Blake," she said, her voice steady. "My staff informed me that you are requesting an immediate removal of a member or guest from the premises." "That is correct," my father replied without hesitation. "My son has chosen to come here dressed in jeans." Jeans. Helen. I cannot allow this level of disrespect, not when I have given 20 years of service to this club. Helen nodded slowly, absorbing his words. "And you wish for the owner to authorize this removal?" "Yes," my father said. "If that is required, then yes. The owner should be made aware of how this reflects on the entire membership." Behind Helen, another figure entered the lobby. Seth Morris, my assistant, walked in with a leather portfolio tucked under his arm. He wore a suit and carried himself with quiet confidence. My mother's eyes widened in confusion as she noticed him. Charlotte frowned, whispering, "Why is he here?" Helen turned toward Seth. "Thank you for coming so quickly." "Of course," Seth replied. "I have the documents you requested." My father looked between Helen and Seth, irritation growing. "What documents? What is going on?" Helen stepped forward, her hands clasped in front of her. Mr. Blake, before we proceed, I believe it is important that the owner of this club address your request personally. Good, my father snapped. I want to speak to him. This is unacceptable. Helen nodded. Then she turned to me. Mr. Blake, she said clearly, would you like to respond to your father's request? The lobby fell silent. My father blinked at her, then at me, confusion washing across his face. What are you talking about? Why are you asking him? Seth opened the leather portfolio and held it open. Helen lifted her chin as she said the words that changed everything. Because your son, Evan Blake, is the owner of Cranford Hills Country Club. The air in the room stopped moving. My father stared at me, eyes widening as the truth settled around him like a shockwave. My father's mouth opened, then closed again. For a moment, he looked like a man who had stepped off a familiar path and found nothing beneath his feet. My mother covered her lips with one trembling hand while Charlotte dropped her phone, the clatter echoing against the marble floor. This is impossible, my father whispered. Evan, tell her she is mistaken. Seth turned the portfolio toward him. Inside were the purchase contracts, renovation invoices, and ownership documents bearing my full name. The acquisition was finalized 7 months ago, Seth explained with calm professionalism. Mr. Blake purchased Cranford Hills for $11.9 million through Blake Hospitality Ventures. He has invested an additional $6.8 million into renovations, including the new tennis complex and spa expansion. My father stared at the paperwork as if it were written in an entirely different language. You bought this place. His voice broke slightly. How you worked in retail. You had no direction. That was 5 years ago, I said quietly. You never asked what I did after that. Helen stepped forward. Your son has been consulting for underperforming hotels and event properties since he was 21. His company now owns 12 locations across Virginia and North Carolina. Cranford Hills is his 13th. My mother shook her head slowly as if the world she understood was slipping away. Evan, why did you not tell us? I met her eyes. When would you have listened? When Father called me a disappointment? When Charlotte introduced me as someone who was still figuring out his life? I paused. You never asked who I had become. My father swallowed hard. I did not know. No, I said you did not want to know. Helen cleared her throat gently. Mr. Blake, we still need to address your earlier request to have the owner removed from the property. Since the owner is your son, we must follow the disciplinary guidelines regarding misconduct toward another member. My father's face went pale. Misconduct? Yes, Helen said. Calling for the removal of the club's owner without cause is considered harassment and behavior detrimental to the club's reputation. My mother took a shaky step forward. Evan, please. This has gone far enough. But the truth was finally out, and for the first time in my life, I was not the one shrinking. I was the one standing. For a long moment, no one moved. The only sound in the lobby was the soft trickle of water from the fountain near the entrance. My father stood rigid, as if a lifetime of certainty had been stripped away in a single breath. My mother's eyes were glossy with disbelief, and Charlotte's face had lost all its practiced elegance. She looked young, frightened, and suddenly very unsure of her place in the world. Helen held her tablet in both hands, her posture straight and formal. As the owner, Mr. Blake has full authority to evaluate member behavior. This includes the ability to issue suspensions when actions violate Section 7.3 of the Cranford Hills Membership Agreement. My father found his voice, though it trembled. Suspensions? This is absurd. I was enforcing standards. I was protecting the integrity of this club. You were attempting to have the owner escorted out because of personal embarrassment, Helen replied steadily. That is not enforcement. That is mistreatment. Seth stepped closer to me. Evan, would you like to review the relevant clauses before making a decision? My father turned to me with a pleading expression I had never seen on his face. Evan, listen to me. I did not know. If I had known, I raised a hand. That is the point, Father. It should not matter whether I am the owner, a guest, or someone you think does not belong here. You judged me because of clothing. You judged me because you have judged me for years. My mother stepped forward, her voice shaking. Evan, please. This situation is humiliating. Let us talk privately. Do not do this here. I did not create this scene, I replied. I simply stood where you could see me. Charlotte wiped at her eyes. Evan, do not suspend us. This club is our community. It is everything to us. I looked at each of them. For years I had been the quiet one, the overlooked one, the one who never matched their polished standards. Now I stood as the person with authority, and yet all I felt was an ache that stretched across a decade of silence and disappointment. Helen, I said, my voice steady, suspend my father from the board immediately. Suspend my mother and Charlotte for 30 days, my father gasped. My mother whispered my name. Charlotte began to cry. But for the first time I did not shrink. I did not apologize. I simply chose myself. Security approached with quiet professionalism, their footsteps soft against the polished floor. They did not touch my family. They simply stood nearby, a physical reminder that the situation was no longer in my father's control. My father stared at them as if the world had suddenly tilted. My mother pressed both hands against her chest, breathing unevenly. Charlotte looked small, reduced, as if her confidence had fallen away with her membership. Helen addressed them gently. Mr. Blake has exercised his rights as owner. Suspended members must leave the property until a formal review is completed. My father shook his head in disbelief. You cannot do this, Evan. I have served on the board for 12 years. I have represented this club with pride. This is my community. You chose to weaponize it against me, I said. You made this place more important than your own son. My father's face twisted, not with anger this time, but with something closer to grief. You do not understand how important reputation is here. I understand perfectly, I answered. I grew up watching you protect your image at any cost, even when that cost was me. My mother stepped closer, tears forming. Evan, please. Your father's heart cannot take this stress. He is not a young man anymore. For a moment, guilt nudged its way into my thoughts, but I forced myself to stand firm. I am not punishing you for your age. I am holding you accountable for your actions. Charlotte's voice cracked. Evan, I am sorry. I should not have judged you today. I should not have judged you for years. She wiped her cheeks quickly as if embarrassed to be seen crying. Please do not take our membership away. This club is where my friends are. It is where my life is. I inhaled slowly, letting the weight of the moment settle. 30 days, I repeated. Use them to reflect. Security escorted them out through the main entrance. No one spoke. Every member in the lobby watched them walk away, whispers filling the air like a breeze rippling through tall grass. When the doors closed behind them, the lobby grew still again. Helen approached me. Mr. Blake, that was a significant decision. It was necessary, I said, though my voice wavered. I stood there, no longer the boy my family dismissed, but not quite the victor either. The power was mine, but it did not feel like triumph. It felt heavy, complicated, and painfully overdue. That evening, my phone filled with notifications until the screen grew hot beneath my fingers. Missed calls, voicemails, long messages that shifted rapidly in tone. Some begged, some blamed, some demanded explanations as if I owed them one. I turned the device face down on the table, letting the buzzing continue without my attention. For the first time in hours, the house felt painfully quiet. The silence settled over me like a heavy blanket as I sat in my living room, a place my family had never stepped inside, a place they did not even know I owned. The Victorian molding, the warm lamp glow, the framed photographs on the mantel known of it eased the ache in my chest. Early the next morning, I listened to the voicemails. My mother's voice came first, brittle and trembling. "Evan, your father had to be taken to the hospital. His blood pressure spiked from all this stress. Please call us. Please do not let this tear the family apart." Then Charlotte. "Evan, my friends are asking questions. I am being pushed to step down from the charity board. This is ruining my reputation. You need to fix this." Then my father. "Evan, I have spoken to Harold Wexley. He believes your actions violate several bylaws. If needed, I will file a formal complaint. This is not finished." The messages continued, each more frantic than the last. I sat still, letting every word settle before deleting each voicemail one by one. At 9 o'clock, I met my legal team. 3 lawyers sat across from me in the conference room, stacks of documents neatly arranged. Their expressions were polite but serious. Sarah, my lead counsel, folded her hands. "Evan, legally, you acted within your rights. As owner, you have broad discretionary authority. However, the suspension of a board member has procedures attached. You did not follow them. I bypassed the process," I said. "Yes," Sarah replied. "Your father could challenge this, and the case would become public. The headline would not favor you." Marcus, the governance specialist, leaned forward. "You can stand firm and win, but at a cost. Your second option is reinstating them with defined conditions. It reflects control, discipline, and maturity." "And the third option?" I asked. "Sell the club," Marcus said quietly. "Walk away entirely." The words struck something deep inside me. Cranford Hills represented years of work sacrifice and silent pride. Selling it felt like surrender. I shook my head. "I am not selling." Sarah nodded. "Then we prepare a path toward controlled reconciliation." And for the first time since that terrible brunch, I felt something shift inside me, resolve, not rage. A decision forming steady and deliberate. I left the conference room with a clear plan forming in my mind. The anger that had driven my decision in the lobby was still there, but it no longer controlled me. Instead, a quiet determination settled in its place. If there was going to be reconciliation, it would be on firm ground, not on guilt, fear, or manipulation. That afternoon, I called my father. He answered on the first ring as if he had been holding the phone in his hand waiting. "Evan," he said, his voice strained and tired. "We need to talk," I replied, calmly. There was a long pause before he spoke again. "All right." I explained the situation exactly as my legal team had laid it out, the authority I held, the procedural gaps, and the options available. I told him I was prepared to reinstate his membership and his board privileges under 3 firm conditions. First, I said you, Mother, and Charlotte must provide a formal written apology acknowledging that asking for my removal based on appearance was inappropriate. My father inhaled sharply. "Evan, that is humiliating." "No," I answered. "Humiliating is being told I am an embarrassment in front of 50 people. This is accountability." Silence followed, heavy and uncomfortable. Second, I continued, all of you will participate in a full review of the dress code policies. They must become clear, fair, and consistently enforced. No more selective judgment. My father exhaled slowly. That is reasonable. And third, I said you will respect my ownership. You will not undermine decisions, question my authority publicly, or use your board position to create obstacles. If you cannot support the direction I am taking this club, then you may resign, but you will not interfere. Another long silence. When my father finally spoke, his voice had changed. The iron certainty that usually shaped every word was gone, replaced by something quieter, almost fragile. Evan, he said, I should have asked about your life. I should have paid attention. I was proud of Charlotte because her achievements were visible. People could admire them. What you did was behind the scenes. I did not understand it, so I assumed you were failing. His confession landed with unexpected weight. I am sorry, he said. Not because of the club, not because of the embarrassment. I am sorry because I did not see you. For the first time in years, I felt something loosen inside me, not forgiveness yet, but the beginning of space where forgiveness might one day grow. The following Sunday, I returned to Cranford Hills. The air was warm, the kind of gentle warmth that settles on the skin without pressing. I parked my car in the same spot as the week before, but the weight in my chest was different now. It no longer felt like dread. It felt like possibility. I wore the exact same outfit, dark jeans, a clean polo shirt, and a blazer. I felt no need to dress differently for anyone, not anymore. The club doors opened smoothly as I walked inside, and several staff members nodded respectfully. Their expressions held none of the confusion or caution from the previous week. They knew the truth now. My family waited at our usual table on the terrace. When I stepped outside, they all rose to their feet. It startled me more than I expected. My father stood straight, his posture formal, but his expression gentler. My mother's eyes were warm, and Charlotte offered a tentative smile that looked almost shy. Evan, my father said thank you for coming. I thought it was time I replied. My mother clasped her hands together. We read your conditions. We have already submitted the written apologies to Ms. Ward. She hesitated, then added softly, we meant every word. We sat. The waiter approached with polite greetings, and for once no one watched us with curiosity. No one whispered. No one glanced at my jeans. Charlotte spoke first. I read everything about Blake Hospitality Ventures. Your projects are remarkable. She paused, her voice thickening. I am sorry for assuming you were lost all these years. My father nodded. I have been telling my colleagues about your work. Your strategies, your ability to identify potential where others see failure. It is impressive. I looked at them, unsure how to absorb praise from voices that had once dismissed me so easily. My mother reached for my hand. We cannot change the past, but we can do better from here. I breathed in slowly. The hurt was still there, but so was something else, open space, a beginning rather than an ending. We can try, I said. It was not a dramatic reunion. There were no tears, no sudden perfect resolution, but it was honest. And honesty mattered more than perfection. As the sun filtered through the terrace awning and laughter rose quietly around us, I realized something simple and powerful. I belonged here, not because I owned the club, but because I finally owned myself.